Hello and welcome again to Autistic Radio. We're here every Sunday because of our sponsorship from Coldpack. Coldpack.co.uk is where you need to go if you are needing cryotherapy for your physiotherapy practice or your chiropractic practice or your osteopathy practice. Coldpack.co.uk supports us here at Autistic Radio with every sale they make through the website. We usually start with some poetry. Is that again happening here then, Harry? What's Spectrum Voices doing today?
Thanks, Jules. Hello, everyone. This is Harry's Facebook for Sunday, the 10th of May 2026. And this is where we share the Facebook posts on the Autistic Radio page. And as always, is we starting with a poem. As always, we're starting with some poetry. And this time it's from Michaela at Spilling the Tea on Autism and ADHD. And the poem is called Poetry is My Escape. Poetry is my escape. I love to write poetry, the way some people love the moment just before sleep, when the world blurs and nothing is sharp anymore. Poetry is where my thoughts lose their weight. They become fog on water, breath on glass, something felt before it is named. In poetry, time forgets me. Clocks melt into hush. Minutes turn liquid. And I float inside them without urgency, without gravity. My mind doesn't travel in straight lines. It moves like dreams do, images folding into each other. Feelings speaking first, meaning arriving later. Feelings speaking first, meaning arriving later, if it arrives at all. Poetry understands this language. It never interrupts. It never asks me to explain the dream while I am still dreaming. When I fall into focus, it feels like sipping through water without getting wet. The noise dims, the edges dissolve, and I am only pulse and word. Poetry is a place where my intensity becomes soft light, where depth becomes atmosphere, where nothing needs to be fixed to be beautiful. Here, I am allowed to drift, to hover between thought and feeling, to exist without translation. Poetry doesn't wake me up, it tucks me in. And when I return, I carry a quiet glow with me, as if some part of my soul has been speaking in its sleep and finally felt heard. Michaela. What's your thoughts?
That one's very good, Harry. Yeah, that's got a lot of depth. I like the comparison. This is an instant reaction because it's deep. But I like the comparison of poetry with sleep or dreaming. Somewhere that you go to that isn't quite here. The the real life. Um, yeah, there's just a lot of themes running through it that I really like, and I like the way this mind works. and the elemental aspects of the sensory. It's a very sensory poem.
I think I like the idea that it's a poet writing poetry about writing poetry, about the experience of being in it, of creating, and how it creates a space for them, a flow for them, a place that their mind is going to, and also linking that to the autistic brain as well. I really like that about it. I also bravo for the way you read that, Harry. Really nicely measured, I thought.
I really like the words and the way it flows, the rhythm that it has from when I was reading it, you know, silently, and then reading it, of course, aloud. And it reminds me of sometimes of what I've done in the past when writing poetry. It is an escape. It's like, it's sometimes poetry is something that you feel you need to say and let out, and that doesn't feel like an escape. That's more of a release. There's other times where, you know, you write something down, you type something down, or you've got it in your head about these words and descriptions, and there's these pictures that it's in your head as well about just this sort of kind of dreamy like sort of ways of describing things, describing your feelings. It's like another world. And what it also reminds me of is actually writing stories that I used to do as a child. You know, that sort of escapism, that sort of kind of world that you actually create on your own in your own mind. And if you do it long enough, it becomes sort of real. And I think that kind of went not against me. I think it affected me a little bit in terms of dealing with real life when it wasn't so dreamy. And obviously, the reality was quite, you know, can be brutal, and it can be brutal to a lot of people that do writing, and that's why they do it. But what I like about the poetry is it's a shorter way of kind of doing the just doing what we've just been reading out, just get into this world. And you're reading someone else's description. It's like you're entering their world, but you're not invading their world because obviously everybody's got their own interpretation. And I just like how poetry is such as this. Just the way the words flow and the description, you're going, that is fantastic. The way that they've written that. It makes sense, but it sounds so original. And that's what I like about the poem. It will mean so much to so many people in different ways. GR saying in the text, melting clocks is like a Dali painting or Dalai painting.
Yeah, there's a surrealist painting, a famous one by Dali, that where the clocks are all melting and flowing over edges. Um, yeah, I was kind of taught at school when you analyse poems and analysing is kind of killing things after a while. That you look for themes and stuff, right? Certain words that are used a lot, and I like this fluid thing that's running through this. I also really am responding or resonating with what I call transitional kind of elements. You know how one thing turns into another, and you don't quite know. So atmosphere is kind of a mix of air and water, and so the melting clocks is a bit like, you know, very unreal, but talks about a move from one thing to another. And I've spent a lot of time this week with some old friends, and we were talking about how to get into these spaces, you know, how to create these spaces to be like this. which this poem is all about, of falling into this space of the bit that many love, which is just before sleep. Um, it's really great.
Yeah, it's a kind of suspended time, isn't it? The melting of clocks and that feeling where time doesn't quite have an urgency. You are kind of suspended, kind of in it. Things are happening, feelings, thoughts, everything's happening, but time seems like an irrelevance. It's flowing around you almost.
It's almost like a live poem. It's like as you read it, you feel it's happening now. And I'm really struck by that final line. It's like final lines can often be quite important. As if some part of my soul has been speaking in its sleep and finally felt heard. That's some way to end.
I do like the dreamy element of it and, for want of a better term, suspension of time. Because I have felt like that, not just writing poetry or writing anything, but being in this sort of process where you're feeling relaxed and time doesn't matter, for a little while. Like there's a bit of relaxation because it doesn't happen very often. Because certainly in my life, it's time is constant. It's always planning ahead, and I'm actually generally planning my years ahead, because of the stuff that I do. Put stuff in a diary. I still have a diary what you write in. I haven't kind of moved on to the sort of more technically advanced diaries. And it's all about planning ahead and what's going to be done then. And even though most of it I'm in control of, it's constantly thinking about time and structure and everything's just real. But this sort of kind of writing, sort of poetry, it kind of eases it all away. I mean, eases it all away just by reading it, just now, and even talking about it just now. It's like, even though we're actually in a time sort of thing right now in terms of how long that we're on tonight, it's just like I feel a lot more relaxed. Generally relaxed anyway now, but what I mean is actually it makes you think, and it's this positive kind of buzz I certainly feel from it, especially the positive language where what the poem is saying is it's bringing things through that haven't been heard before. It's bringing positive feeling that hasn't previously been felt. It's been felt in that moment, in that terms of what the poetry is talking about.
I agree, Harry. I think that's an important part of poetry and literature is the other meaning of reading. You can read text on a page, but you can read out loud too. So the recitation, the incantation, is almost soothing to the body to read out loud these things. And it can put you in that space intended by, I suppose, the writing.
I feel
I'd
very
connect that with,
fortunate.
sorry.
Sorry, mate. I feel very fortunate, and I think it must be about being a simple man. Um, because I feel as I reach these kind of spaces without working on poetry. Poetry is really intense, really hard work, and I can get how all of that going on in your head is such a thing that it can be really all absorbing. but I would have thought also exhausting. I feel a bit fortunate because I feel as though I can get into these spaces, these kind of flow states, these dream states, these daydreaming places, without doing the hard work.
Can I ask how you do that? Because I'm tying this in now with autistic forms of communication. You know, as it said in the poem, something about not being in straight lines. I don't think my mind doesn't travel in straight lines. So my question would be, how do you get into those spaces? Because I had an experience. Sorry, I'll just finally. I had this experience this week of getting back on my bike again after 10 years, a push bike, and it releases so many energies in you that take you back to when you used to ride your bike. But you're older now, you're a bit different, but it's a way for me to access a new space, a new reality. And when I come off the bike and sit down, yeah, the energy takes me somewhere else.
I think just what you said links to nostalgia, places you've been before, links to nostalgia take you into very easy places to start daydreaming from there and carrying it from there. Um, but also, frankly, it's down to again traveling again, where you're just in a room where you've just got nothing around you except your own thoughts. It's it doesn't need to be a Buddhist absolute nothing in the room situation for you to have a clean space. And I can do that in a hotel room and get just a sense of really thinking things freshly, you know?
Yeah, I'm thinking of this body thing, you know, the word is somatic, you know, how you're, that's why I explained about the bike again and coming off the bike, the body feels different and you move into a different kind of space. So it's nothing really, for me, complicated about that, and it doesn't dwell necessarily on nostalgia or even my mind. It's just a way of, you almost tire your mind out, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, a bit like having a fever dream when you're ill. Kind of, your brain is so slow and sloopy that you can catch hold of the thoughts before they disappear.
The next post is from Diversity Doodles, which is a personal blog. Doodles that, with your help, aim to spread messages about neurodiversity that I'd like the world to understand. Thank you for help making it happen. And the doodle I've shared is someone on a swing with colours around. It's a butterfly and some leaves and a cloud, all nice and colourful. And the picture itself says, "Yes, I know I am different. Don't try and force me to fit in. Help me to embrace the fact that I don't." And it continues to say, "He's autistic. Yes, but he's autistic. You should. He's autistic. You need to. No, please stop. There's no but. There's no should. There's no need to. If I want advice, which I often do, I'm going to go and seek out those with lived experience. I'm going to ask directly, and then I'm going to find out that if that advice is practical, workable, and suitable for my kid specifically. I realise your intention is good, but please just don't with the random unsolicited advice you think I might want, based on what you do with your kid, what you believe being autistic means without lived experience, what works with your cousin's brother's autistic niece, or things you think will help him appear more neurotypical. Thank you. Love. What's your thoughts?
I'd just say it's a wee bit prickly. I'm feeling that.
Yes, it is. But from my side, I can, even though I don't have children, but as an autistic person, I can understand where it's coming from. I think it's down to people thinking that they're experts, even with good intentions. Like if they've met someone with autism, if they know, if they've got a relative that's autistic, um, even if they know anybody autistic, or even being autistic themselves, they don't actually need to give advice all the time. Even though what this is saying is they would like to speak to people with lived experience. But I'm unsure if it means lived experience with autism or lived experience with someone, who's caring for someone or knows someone who's autistic. But I do generally get, what it's saying. It's like, no, there's no one size, there is no one size fits all. And I think that's sometimes what society, or most of the time society, is trying to do. They discover a term and they kind of think there's just this one thing you should do along the lines of going from A to B, even though it is so obvious with absolutely everything that everybody is different, every individual is different, and that includes autism.
Yeah, I agree with you, right? It's spiky, isn't it? Um, these people are coming from a world that I'm not in touch with. I'm not in touch with having an autistic kid and having other people criticizing me. That time has gone for me, and it seems to me that the person writing it has had enough of who people who think they know tell them stuff, and so it comes across spiky. Probably need a bit of that here and there. Probably need a bit of people saying, this really pisses me off to get heard.
Yeah, I might not have felt it was so spiky if it was explained what kind of relationship this advice was coming from. It just seems kind of general, and it makes me feel like, sometimes we know people who have a chip on their shoulder and see this kind of negativity all the time, expect it almost. And I'm not saying that's what's happening here. I just think I'm absorbing a sort of prickliness from it because I was looking for a wee bit more explanation as to how this advice is coming to this person.
Yeah, don't you think we are quite chippy? you know, uh, an awful lot of the social media stuff, an awful lot of the broadcast stuff to do with autism is frankly an autistic person being quite aggressively chippy about a bad deal that they've been given. And I'm not denying the bad deal. Um, it does seem part of the territory, this chippiness. Um, yeah, not comfortable with it all the time. Definitely not.
Yeah, totally agree. There's a lot that I share, from other people. There's even some that I've shared myself that can come across prickly. It's a lot of it is people feeling harshly done by. It's this sort of injustice. Although it doesn't happen to everyone, and sometimes autistic people can be involved in the injustice of others. So, but yeah, you're right. There's a lot of stuff like this. It's prickly, and it's generally someone saying enough is enough. This is me having my say. And even when they do it polite terms, you can feel the tension. You can feel, let's say, aggression. You know what I mean? You feel that there's fire back here, and you understand why that's the case. But it's good to know, and it's good to see that that's not always the case when things are being shared. There's a lot of stuff that's nice and positive, but you know what the world is like. And especially if people are trying to tell you what to do, though. I mean, if people do that to me, I become prickly myself. And I do recall, um, in my 20s anyway, I had this chip in my shoulder because I felt it was harshly done by. And it took me a while to get over that and not using an excuse to. Now, I didn't actually go out and deliberately be bad or do anything like that, but I had this attitude where I had license to behave in a certain way, be sort of aggressive, very defensive. But I learned that's not the way to be. But in certain circumstances, you can understand why people can be that way.
There is this thing also about knowing someone is something, you know? You walk around knowing someone is autistic. I have a real life situation where a neighbour's son, who's grown up now, but is having his issues. And I know that he's autistic. So, but then I also am autistic, but they don't know that. So, what kind of relationships going on there? And um, I wouldn't really give him advice particular to his autism. It would be more sort of a general advice you give to anybody who is a neighbouring family about, what you do and what you maybe don't do in certain social settings. Um, Not as a critique, but just as advice. Because I'd hate to get a situation where you feared to give advice.
Yeah, it really is context dependent, that, isn't it? People being that close to you, and then and knowing full well that somebody is autistic. Yeah, that's. I've had fun with this because I've been travelling. Um, so I was in a hostel and lots of autistic people were there coming through, and I was able to have really open and honest and out there conversations with people because they knew that it was a short term situation, and but you have to live with the consequences of the decision you're making when you either reveal your own autism or talk about somebody else's autism. That's a different situation. Um, I can only say that from my experience of the fun bit of these kind of very short term relationships, it's really good fun talking about autism with other autistic people who are on the realization of their own autism. It's really fun thing to do if you get that opportunity.
Yeah, but there's also a bit of me that doesn't want to get too involved with someone, because sometimes if you open up the door just a peek, that's it, you know? It's, we're good buddies, perhaps. And I'm not saying that will happen, But I've had experiences in the past where if you're a sympathetic ear for someone, you have to really be careful about how much you're taking on there.
Well, yeah, that's the difference in the situations. You're in that situation, you have to live with the consequences, whereas the situation I've described, travelling, I don't. You know, it has a finite end.
The interesting situations that I've been in where was when someone was talking to me about someone else with autism, but not knowing that I was autistic and how they describe it. And it's not about, they don't say anything bad as such, but it's just the way the manner that they say it. And, and even these days, people still use, oh, I know a neighbour, or my neighbour has a son or a daughter, or nephew, niece, or someone who has Asperger's, and they struggle with social situations, and they rely on routines, and they've got an obsessive hobby, or a strange hobby, or a different kind of hobby that other people don't understand. You know, and I stand there, and you don't want to tell absolutely everybody, you're autistic. Not that I'm ashamed of it, but it's just one of those things you want to keep to yourself, depending who you're talking to. Not that the person that's saying it is going to be any threat. It's just I find it interesting hearing people talk about autism, not knowing I'm autistic. So you're actually hearing what they actually would say, rather than them actually, or they would actually change it a little bit so it wouldn't be offensive. So I don't know if yourselves have been in situations like that in terms of how autism is described in others when people don't know you're autistic yourself.
Harry, you reminded me when I was a kid and I used to pretend I was asleep so as I could hear what the grown-ups were talking about. It's a kind of cheater's way to gain access to the truth, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. It actually reminds me of when I was at the Scouts, and just the way that my personality was, I was kind of the outcast. And obviously, I found it hard to see if we went away and trips somewhere, like camping even, or even like being in chalets. I'd find it hard to have conversations just the way it was just difficult. So sometimes I would just sit there kind of quiet. And when they were talking away about all different things, nothing that interesting, but I can remember them saying, they would ask my name, and I go, what? What is it? So they think I'm not listening, and then they're starting talking away, and they're talking about all kinds of daft stuff. And I'm thinking, oh, this is a wee trick here. Yeah, you just reminded me of that. The next post is from Fidgets and Fries, who is Tiffany Hammond, who's the voice behind this, and is a black autistic mother advocating for systematic change and supporting her two autistic sons. Her work is rooted in storytelling and advocacy, aiming to challenge the perception of autism as a lifelong burden and to inspire thought leaders through critical discourse. Tiffany's activism is deeply intertwined with her personal experiences with autism and parenting, making her a powerful advocate for autistic individuals and their families. And what she shared is the following: I built a career from nothing. I became a best selling author through my own voice, my own work, and my own relentless drive. I advocate for my children with a level of ferocity most people would never sustain. could never sustain. I show up for people. I create community. I tell the truth. I build belonging. I carry more than most people could ever handle. And I keep going even when life hits me in the mouth. I am a good person. I am not small. I am not weak. I am not someone you can break. I am someone who rises every time. I have to remind myself that I'm her whenever someone hurts me. I'm not a supermodel. I'm not a size 2. I am not some mega celebrity or large influencer whose content goes viral every 3 posts. I give so much of myself away for free because I want a better world for us all. But I'm a good person who loves so hard and has spent her life being underloved and underappreciated. Look at who I've become and look at where I am heading. What's Steele's thoughts?
I like it. I think it's strong, it's worthy, and it's a poetic manifesto statement. You know, this is an ally. This is an autism mum who's autistic. If there's somebody that is exposed to all the aspects of autism and all the disinformation, it's this person. She is wading through everything and being bombarded by everything and coming up with cogent social stuff to make us all think. You know, it's pretty damn heroic.
This may sound trite, but I really mean it. That is a beautiful face.
Yeah, it is a beautiful face. You're right. It's a National Geographic face, isn't it? Something that's out of the usual.
It's a smile of love and defiance, I feel, the picture of Tiffany. And when I was reading that, I felt I was reading out a poem. You were saying yourself, Jules, about how poetic it sounds. It's this sort of, not just defiance, it's just, defiance sounds too kind of direct in terms of, hey, you listen to me. It's actually beautifully put across. Talking about, it's just like, it's about passion. It's about doing the right thing. And it's actually about actually saying to oneself, it's like a confidence builder, a self confidence builder. Because I know that I do this many times when I'm feeling a bit down, life just gets you down, sort of thing. And you've got to kind of remind yourself of what you've achieved and what you've done and what you mean to yourself, but also what you mean to other people. Talk about your successes, talk about the journey you've been to that success, whatever that may be, but also reminding yourself that you're a beautiful person, you're a good person. Because I think the best people are the first people who start being self deprecating just because of how hard things can be and because other people do it. And sometimes, if so many people do it, you don't start to believe it, but you start to feel like you're it's hard to believe yourself to fight back a little. So I just thought it was beautiful how it was put across, and it's good to know that there's people like Tiffany, like fidgets and fries out there?
Yeah, there's been a theme of assertion going on in my evening. At the 444, we had somebody talking about the preparation of the not just the eulogy but the obituary for their father, and there was assertion in that they wanted not the sugar coating, but they wanted the truth of the person. They wanted the unadorned truth of the history of what this guy had done during his life. And they saw that as an autistic person, they wanted that version, and maybe that was going to be in conflict with other members of their family who were not autistic and who would want a rather different interpretation, a rather only the positive interpretation. And Tiffany asserting like this, and that person writing it how it is, and then people in their poetry writing it how it is. It's all a theme to me about autistic people asserting their identity, their validity, and their truth.
We see it often in our community, don't we? I mean, Robbie isn't here tonight, but I often feel. I was thinking about Robbie as I was reading this. Uh, Robbie will often write out himself and what he understands and knows about his reality and his experiences. And it is assertion. You know, he is asserting himself and saying, I know this, I understand this. But sometimes I think we have to remind ourselves of these things. And so we will put it out there, you know. I've even seen it, yeah, I think we've all expressed this at times. I'm not going to pick out any individuals anymore.
The next post is from Autism Goggles, who are a community education cause page, a place to learn about what it can mean to be autistic. And they shared the following. It's fascinating how quickly compassion disappears when an adult struggles too long for other people's comfort. People see an autistic adult living at home and immediately start calculating what they think should be happening by now. They talk about age as though turning 30 or 40 magically resolves burnout, trauma, executive functioning challenges, mental health struggles, housing costs, or the exhaustion that can come from surviving in a world never designed for your nervous system. At some point, he has to grow up, was a quote shared. At some point, other adults should grow empathy. Many of us have carved out success along navigating experiences that often accompany being autistic. There may have been achievements along the way, finishing high school, pursuing post-secondary education, finding meaningful work, developing creative talents, speaking publicly, or building lives that outwardly appear successful and well managed. Outward success does not tell the whole story. The wildest part is that the loudest critics are rarely the ones sitting beside someone at 2 a.m. during a mental health crisis. They are not the ones helping someone through panic attacks, burnout, sleepless nights, isolation, or thoughts of unaliving themselves. Many parents of autistic adults have spent decades fighting for their children. They did not do all of that just to hand them over to tough love fixes everything crowd. If you have ever sat beside someone you love and wondered if they were going to survive their own mind, maybe lower your voice when discussing what they should be doing by now. What's your thoughts?
Harry, you might want to read that last bit again because it was never sat beside someone you love. I'm not being pernickety, but it just kind of changes the meaning, yeah?
If you have never sat beside someone you love and wondered if they were going to survive their own mind, maybe you'll lower your voice when discussing what they should be doing by now. What's your thoughts?
Um, Suicide, unliving yourself, making that final permanent action that usually is for a temporary problem, is something we have to talk about. And that's what this person is doing. They are pointing out that people who are autistic, people who live with autism, however you want to describe it, are often in places that are so dark that they don't want to live any longer. And if you have helped somebody in that situation and you get a lot of noise from around you, you maybe want to express that. You know, it just feels to me that being autistic is not the issue that leads to the final decisions that lead people to that desperate end of things. It's what's around the autism, the position somebody's in. It's not the autism, it's where the autism is in life. So always reach out.
Yeah, I think it's a good post that explains the desperation that can exist and how that's when the general public struggle to empathise and have compassion. I think that was the initial discussion about, you know, how something can be going on too long for people to deal with. I suppose that's when things become specialised. But as people, you know, there are these desperate situations we're aware of with others. And sometimes it's very difficult to turn away from them.
What the post picks up for me is this attitude where if you don't do something at a certain age, you've failed or you're failing because of the structure of how society is made in terms of schooling for a start. You know, You get to 16, 17, 18. There's always some kind of hierarchy of where you should be, what level you should be, and what level you're at. And if you're struggling, or not just struggling, if you're doing something different, it's like you're looked upon as a bad egg. And the attitude is, oh, you're a bad egg, but there might be a reason why. Oh, autistic, oh, that's holding you back. You're not fitting in, and that's your problem. You're a problem. I mean, I remember all this through school. And the reason it always kind of sits with me is in my head, and I thought life was going so fast. It's like, well, I'm at an age where I'm expected to go out and work. In my head, it was like work in a factory or work, not this work anywhere. But in the way the schooling was, is if you worked in that, even if you worked like in a factory, if you worked in the jobs that my parents worked, my dad was a bin man, bin lorry driver, and my mum was a cleaner. Even that itself was looked upon as a failing. They talked about careers. They talked about going to university. They go, if college would be the sort of either the stepping stone or the plan B if you weren't good enough. So you get hit with all of this, even before you reach 18. And then it comes to things like, well, if you're a certain age, you shouldn't be staying with your parents. If you're a certain age, you should have a family at least. And that's more targeted at women actually. They should have children. And it's infuriating. It's like you should do this, you should do that. And they say that autistic people are the problem. So no wonder people feel suicidal and feel like unaliving themselves, and they just feel stuck, they feel worthless. Because there was a time before my diagnosis, 17, 16, 15 years old, where I felt sort of worthless because I felt I wasn't hitting the heights that I should be for the age I was, because I was a lot more immature because I was scared of growing up. And that was looked upon as an issue, problem child. And I did act in certain ways in school that it looked upon as strange for that age group. It's like I was still a little bit behind in terms of wanting to be playful and not want to think about anything serious. But then you think about it, that's where creativity comes from. That's where a lot of success comes from. So it's just so, there's so much I can say, but I'll leave it at there. But it does kind of demonstrate how things need to change.
I think, Harry, they have changed. It's just that we're not kids anymore. And I think the younger generations are experiencing autism in a completely different way. In the younger generations, it's kind of so what autism. Neurodivergent. Oh yeah, what type? Oh yeah, so much more open and understanding and talking about it in those younger generations that the world has got better for young autistic people in many ways.
That's a fair point. I think it's stuck in a little kind of time zone there. You're right. I have actually heard. I mean, you know, I've got a friend who has autistic children, and things are totally different. And although things should be better, things are a lot better now than they were back. I'm going back nearly 30 years, so absolutely. Um, yeah, and it's good. It's good that that's happening. And the thing that I fear is we've talked about is people are trying to stop that trend because people think it's wrong or too odd, but you're always going to get people who'll criticise anything that doesn't suit within their own beliefs or their own whatever. So yeah, it's good that you added that in, Jules. Things have changed for the better for people, which is good. The next post is from Aurora Consulting. Disability Service and Business Consultant. Aurora is an autistic-owned business offering organisations bespoke training and consulting. And they shared the following. Let's talk about assumptions. Back when I was in secondary school, I had a lovely art teacher. One day at the end of the lesson, he had a wee chat with the class as we were lining up to go. He talked about challenging assumptions and mentioned that he spent time growing up in Africa and spoke Swahili. Things we would never know just by looking at him. I was standing close by to him, so he gentle-heartedly used me an example, saying that I would be surprised and not understand him if he spoke Swahili. Well, what on earth was I to do except reply in Swahili back? I'm not fluent in Swahili, but my knowledge is extremely limited to a couple of phrases. My grandfather learned Swahili while he was stationed in Africa during World War II and used to sing to me in Swahili when I was a child. He always told me it was time for bed in Swahili too. So, I imagine my teacher's face when I told him I should go to bed in Swahili because he had just made an assumption about me too. To his credit, he acknowledged that he should not have made the assumption either, and we all had a good laugh about it. All of us learned something that day. People make assumptions about each other all the time based on very limited information. And for autistics, this can often be damaging when this is done to us. As a middle-aged, mostly femme, presenting person, I am nobody's first guess for being autistic, but it is so important people look past their assumptions and open their minds to the fact there are many ways to be autistic as there are autistic people. If you really want to know the person in front of you, we have to take time and see past the stereotypes. There's no one size fits all when it comes to who we are. What's people's thoughts?
I'm just wondering if it's an assumption that a femme presenting person would not be the first guess for being autistic. Yeah.
I've met Aurora, and being autistic would be the first guess. I really believe that. It's great asking for understanding that autistic people are all very different, present different ways, and then so do non-autistic people. And in other posts, I see a real intolerance from Aurora towards another group of people that deserve a conversation. So I feel a bit, advocate-wise, it's letting us down to be quite so partisan.
Also, when I think about assumptions, I also think about expectations.
Yeah, that's true. But I think we're all guilty of that. Sometimes even within ourselves. It's the expectations, it's the stereotype. I think for quite some time I actually played to the stereotype to an extent because I thought that was the way to be. But the stereotype, I didn't go Rain Man or anything, but it's just like there's this sort of stereotype that I thought, things from what I've read, and I thought, well, that's the way I should act. It's like so people know I've got autism. I know it sounds a bit silly, but at the time I just thought, well, I'm autistic. It should be this characteristics. It sounds so ridiculous now because everybody's different, as non-autistic people can be. But yeah, the expectations are certainly there.
There's also a lovely bit in here about hidden talents. I'm getting that feeling, and the exposure of that in some way, the unexpressed hidden qualities of someone.
I think this thing about assumptions as well is because this has come out often in these pods, and people make assumptions about me. But the thing is, you're making assumptions about them. It's just a vicious circle. It's just like building a house of cards. And unless someone doesn't do that, then the situation can't be moved forward because if you constantly think other people are assuming they know what you are, and you're doing that, you've got to have a basis of trust to move things forwards.
Well, thanks everyone. That was a great conversation tonight, as always. And thanks for all the people that have shared the post that we have shared and discussed as well. So this is Harry's Facebook for Sunday, the 10th of May, 2026, which is part of the Spectrum Voices Conversation, which is live every Sunday, 5:55 p.m. to 7 p.m. UK time. So thanks for listening and look forward to next time.